MacVoices is supported by LinkedIn Jobs. Find the right person for your business today with LinkedIn Jobs. Pay what you want and get $50 off your first job post at linkedin.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, we're all getting geared up for Big Sur in the fall. We are getting geared up for iPadOS 14 and iOS 14. And here to tell us about take control of iPad 14 and iOS 14, his new book, I guess, or latest revision, depending on the way you look at it, is Mr. Josh Centers. Josh, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me on. And it actually is a new book because for the first time since I started, I completely scrapped the old manuscript and rewrote the entire 101, 102 pages from scratch.
Wow. Okay, so it truly is a new book in every sense.
Mm-hmm.
Great.
Yeah, we redid it. We wanted to focus exclusively on the new features. We do have some of the basics in there still, but we wanted to really hone in on all the new stuff and teach people how to use that.
So, Josh, and this may have to do with the way you approach the book and how we approach this discussion. Is it better to talk about iOS 14 first and then the differences with iPad OS 14, or should we treat them as two completely separate topics?
I would start with iOS 14 because a lot of, at this point, they still have so many similarities. Far more similarities than differences. We actually discussed last year once Apple announced a split of maybe splitting it into two books. I just haven't seen much reason to do that yet. And quite frankly, there isn't just a ton of stuff exclusively for the iPad this year, although there is some interesting things. And there's also some things from iOS that aren't in iPadOS we can talk about. But really iOS is the basis of everything.
Well, that's the way it feels, I think, to most of us, given that that's the way it was before the split, that the two pretty much had parity. But there were a few things that worked on the iPad that weren't included with the phone, and for very good reason. That it's a completely different screen size, and you approach it differently, especially from a productivity standpoint. So with that, let's talk iOS 14. As we talk about this, as we speak right now, I think 13.7 came out, and so we're quickly counting down to 14. What's new? What should we be excited about?
So the big new thing in iOS 14, and it was rumored for a long time, but the much anticipated home screen overhaul. And that consists of two things. One is a new feature called App Library, which, and both these features, incidentally, if you have any familiarity with Android, they will both be very familiar because they're both very much Android concepts pioneered by Android. So the first thing is called App Library, and it solves a common problem for iPhone users where you just have pages and pages of apps. Because every time you install an app, it goes onto one of your home pages and things get cluttered and unfocused. And if you're like me, it seems like most people are like this. Your first page is very well curated. It's all your most commonly used apps, your favorite apps, or at least the apps you want to tell yourself to use. And the second page is your less common apps, your less frequently used apps. And then after that, it's just a jumble, right? So App Library, what it does is it automatically sorts all of your apps into automatically created folders. You can't change really anything in the App Library. It's the last page of your home screens. So if you just have like one or two home screens, you swipe all the way to the end, and there's your App Library. And what that does, by default, new apps are stored in the App Library instead of being dumped to your home screen. And you can drag apps out of the App Library, put them on your home screen. Another thing you can do, which I show how to do in the book, you can actually hide home screens. So if you have like 15 apps, 15 pages of just random apps, you can very easily and quickly hide those pages and not have to look at them ever again. I actually had a question from a reader, so I'll answer it here on MacVoices for anyone else who wants to know. The reader wanted to know if your apps will, if you have no choice but to use App Library. Well, you can't turn it off, but you don't have to use it if you don't want to. If you've spent years carefully managing your apps and putting them, in the folders and everything you want. It won't do anything to change that. You can totally ignore the app library if you want to. And you could even, there's a setting in the settings app under home screen. You can still have new apps appear on your home screens if you want to. So if you're concerned about that, if you're concerned that app library is going to mess up your organization, you don't have to worry. That's not an issue. The other big thing in iOS 14, Apple has redesigned the widgets. So for years, what they call the Today view has been able to have these little widgets, little boxes of app information, like little miniature apps. Well, now you can actually, they've redesigned those, at least the Apple provided ones. They're a lot more Apple Watchy, for lack of a better word. They're very similar to Apple Watch faces and apps. And you can actually deposit those on, and this is another thing from Android, you can actually put those on your home screen now. So, you can have like a picture of your kids on your home screen. You can have like a weather forecast on your home screen. There's even an app, there's even a widget, and this is an interesting one. It's the Siri Suggestions apps. So you can have just like, if you want to, on your first home screen, you don't even have to have any apps. You could just have like a bunch of widgets.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Could you please repeat what you said?
Okay. That seems to happen every time. Anyway, so you can have the suggested apps that are just managed for you. So you don't have to manage apps on your home screen at all unless you want to. And
I'm not sure I'm hearing you correctly. My apologies.
I don't even know what that is. Oh, hold on. Super professional here on the.
I think Alexa strikes again.
Yeah. I'm glad I don't have one of those plugged in. And then there's a special widget they call the Smart Stack, and it's a rotating. It's like a widget variety pack. If you don't know which widget to put on your home screen, you put that on there, and you can swipe between different things like news headlines and photos and weather, and it will actually switch through those between the day automatically based on whatever Apple's criteria are. So that's the two big exciting new features about iOS 14: the app library and the widgets in your home screen. And I think that's going to be a big change for a lot of people.
So I want to make sure I heard the widgets or the app library explanation correctly. Mm-hmm. So let's say I upgrade to iOS 14. And the first thing I do is I download the new application, Josh's Mason Jar.
Yeah.
And so you're telling me it goes back to the app library into an appropriate folder.
Yeah. It by default. Now you can change it so it appears on your home screen if you want to, but yeah, by default it will go into the app library. And then I'll just take a look. I'll just tell you about the categories here. So there's actually a recently added folder that you can open up, and it has all your most recently installed applications. And then there's other ones like suggestions, like suggested apps, social, productivity, utilities, entertainment, etc. And there's also, of course, you can search for these with Spotlight, but you can also search for them in the app library as well if you want to find something and quickly move it to a home screen or otherwise, open it or manipulate it.
Well, that's sort of where I was going. So since you said that, I'll jump to this question, then I'll go back. But so let's say I have one of those apps on screen number 7, and okay, I found the app and I can launch it in iOS 13 point whatever. I could launch it from there, but there's really no way that, at least that I know of, and maybe I'm wrong, to assign that to say my home screen, my real home screen, without finding it somewhere on page 7 and dragging it across. Is that rectified in this?
No, so there's a couple of ways you can launch apps. Now, it's not really that much different. So either you can drop an app onto one of your home screens, or of course, you can always search for it from Spotlight, which is why I do a lot of the time. Or then you can go to your app library and you can either open it from one of those predetermined folders, or you can search for it in the app library and launch it from there. Those are really your options. If you have just pages of stuff and you can't, it's all unsorted, then it'll still be Apple won't mess with the way you've set up your apps. But again, you can easily hide unwanted home screens too. So that's another thing too.
Right, but there's no way I can search for that particular app and then automatically have it moved to my home screen or to somewhere else. I have to physically move that app. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, it won't do anything to mess with your home screens. Like anything on your home screens, you'll have to manage yourself. Now there is the Siri Suggestions widget they have that automatically presents depending on the widget size you choose, it'll present so many apps, and they're just automatically selected based on what you've installed recently, what you've used recently, what Siri anticipates that you're going to use. So you have that option, but no, like it won't like just automatically clean up your home screens and all that. You'll have to intervene.
Okay. So the second question then. So you say that the app library, they're there at the end of my home screens.
Mm-hmm.
Are apps then appearing two places at once? I mean, in other words, if I have Busy Cow on my home screen right now, I convert to iOS 14. Is it also on my home screen, but also back in an appropriate folder at the end?
Yes. Yeah. The app library contains all of your apps, whether they're on the home screen or not. You can kind of consider it like on the Mac, all your applications are in, at least in theory, in the applications folder. And then you can make shortcuts on your desktop for those applications. So that's sort of the way you might think about it.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So you never take anything out the library unless you're deleting it. You just have, in essence, an alias to it.
Yeah, another way to think about it, it's sort of like when Steve Jobs was talking about iCloud being the truth, as in this is the definitive place where your data is. The app library is the truth, in that this is the canonical list of apps you have on your phone. And then, and that's sort of an interesting paradigm shift now that I'm thinking about it. So before, all of your apps had to be on home screen, right? Like that was like the way Apple, stored those things in user space. And so now those apps are actually stored in the app library, and then you can put shortcuts to them from the home screen. Now, of course, it looks the same. It doesn't look any different to the average user. Another thing you do too, I do want to mention this. So if you press and hold on an app on your home screen, you can not only delete it, but you can also choose to just delete it from your home screen. And so that way you won't delete the app itself. It will remain in the app library, but then it just won't be on your home screen anymore.
LinkedIn Jobs is supporting MacVoices. You know what makes your business go and grow? Good people. Good salespeople, good service people, good design people, good marketing people. Pick a function at your company, and it's the people behind it that make it great. And that's why LinkedIn Jobs is so important. LinkedIn Jobs not only helps you find the right people, but it helps you find them easily. That's important since you have one or two other things to do during the day. I'm on LinkedIn. You're on LinkedIn. Or you should be. If someone in business isn't on LinkedIn, I tend to ask why, and then I go to the next person who is. That's because I know that the candidates on LinkedIn are screened for hard and soft skills to make the hire not just fast, but right. There's a reason that LinkedIn Jobs is rated the #1 hiring platform for delivering quality hires. And that same reason is why someone is hired every 8 seconds with LinkedIn. Tap into that power as you make your next hire. Find the right person for your business today with LinkedIn Jobs. You can pay what you want and get the first $50 off. Just visit linkedin.com/MacVoices. Again, that's linkedin.com/MacVoices to get $50 off your first job post. Terms and conditions apply. Thanks to LinkedIn Jobs for their support of MacVoices. That was going to be my next question, deleting apps. And so that's a really interesting distinction, and that's something we're all going to have to get used to, that if I want to get rid of an app, really get rid of an app, I'm going to have to specifically decide to do that. Otherwise, I'm just deleting that for lack of a better term, alias that happened to be occupying that spot.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a little different.
Yeah, I think it's a lot different. Right off the bat, I like it. I like it because it's going to be harder for me to accidentally delete an app. I like the idea of things being organized, and yet I still have the spotlight search to get to them or find them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and one of the things I think Apple's done a good job on this sort of thing is that I think for most people things aren't going to look radically different unless they start just really playing with these concepts. But so I'm just I'm experimenting with stuff right now, and so if I go into what they call Jiggle Mode, it still makes the app icon shake. I still got the little minus there. Let's see. Yeah, and so if I tap the minus, then it'll say delete app, which is the default, and then move to app library. So that's just sort of how it works now. And if you long press, I think they've changed this in the beta. If you long press an app, then it will remove apps there, but there's not an option for the app library. So that I think they've changed that maybe in the beta. So it's not going to look radically different for most people. It's not going to be just a total shock. And that's good. People aren't going to be, I don't think, totally disoriented, even though they may not even realize these features are there until they swipe and come to this thing called App Library and don't know what it is.
Yeah, but I like the idea. I like it because it addresses an issue that we've had now for a while. When the iPhone was new and the apps were new and everything, you started gathering things up, and now, there are people out there that will proudly tell you, I have, hundreds and hundreds of apps, and you kind of say why, because you can't possibly use them all. And I know I recently tried to go through a purge, and okay, I'm going to get rid of anything I really don't use, and I realized that okay, there's some things I might use once every so often. It might be a retail store app or something like that. That it's not like I go shopping every week, but when I do, and I'm in that store, I want to see what's on sale. So now it's shocking how many apps you really do use, not every day and not every week, but over time that you want to have there. And it has become a bit of a chore to try to figure out all those things. So now this addresses that by organizing them, or at least taking a shot at organizing them in some fashion.
Yeah, and Apple's actually really made it so you never have to delete an app, because you can set your apps to offload automatically when you need storage space, which the offloading, what that does, it deletes the app binary itself, but it keeps the data on your phone, so you don't lose the data. It just, the app will reinstall when you try to launch it. So, and with the app library automatically sorting everything, and you can hide those extra home screens, we're really at a point where you don't ever really have to delete an app unless you just want to.
Interesting. Let's talk a little bit more about widgets, though, because you made an interesting comment that your home screen no longer has to have any apps on it if you don't want it to. You can just have widgets there.
Yeah.
And I personally kind of I think I like that idea. I've not played with the betas. You've spent a lot of time with the betas. But the idea that I could have, or maybe it's not my first screen, maybe it's my second screen that is just widgets that becomes sort of an information center, if you will, for things I really care about, whether that's the first screen or the second screen, and then have the alternate, dedicated to the apps that I really use every day.
Yeah, and it's something I'm still kind of wrapping my head around. My home screen right now, and I'm pretty happy with this. My home screen right now, I have they have the different I can't remember what the different sizes are called, but I have like a 4 app icon sized calendar widget that tells me about wherever events are coming up that day, and then I have a long weather app. And I'll tell you, one of the things I really like about the Apple's done in iOS 14 is they've integrated the dark sky stuff. So now the weather app will actually give you rain forecasts and things like immediate rain forecasts. And there's a widget for that. And so it's telling me it's going to start raining in 11 minutes. I see that just from my home screen without having to, I probably can't see it with the blurring there. But anyway, you can kind of get an idea. So I just have really just a handful of app icons, and then I have my calendar widget and my weather widget. And I've been pretty actually, those are not apps on the bottom. That's actually my Siri suggestions. So I've been experimenting with that as a way to quick launch apps because I launch most of my apps from Spotlight anyway. And if I go to my second home screen, I'm less sure about these. This is more my experimental area. I have the Smart Stack and I have news headlines. So, and what's really going to make this interesting is once iOS 14 is released for everybody and we start seeing what third-party developers are doing with these widgets, I anticipate we're going to have some really interesting stuff.
Yeah, and I know there were some really interesting widgets for macOS back when macOS had widgets, and I know a lot of not everybody, but because I don't think they were widely adopted, but there are some people that lived and died by their widgets, and when they disappeared, that was a real tragedy. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of uptake there is for this, and like you say, what developers do with it.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about the Siri suggestions, though. For that to be occupying something on your main screen, it kind of intrigues me.
Right. So it's implemented in a couple of different ways. So let me. I'll just explain this a little bit right here. There's. I'm just going to bring up the widget screen so I can read directly and tell you the thing. So okay, there's the app suggestions widget. Okay, and then hard to show it on camera. I think they've renamed this during the beta. It's app suggestions instead of Siri suggestions. And so there's different sizes. And it's actually a couple of different widgets in one. So one that you have it's a 2x4 little grid of suggested apps, like apps that Siri thinks you're going to want to use at any given moment. And then there's one that's like a 2x2 grid that it's actually what they call a shortcut suggestion. And in this example, like so it's for an action instead of an app. So for this, it's to create a new direct message in Twitter, which is weird because I hardly ever use direct messages. And then there's two long widgets where it's the size where it create a new direct message or send a message to my wife. And then there's the maximum size one. It's like different shortcut suggestions for like going to a certain subreddit or to edit a note, things like that. So there's a few different things you can do with that one widget depending on the size and the variant you select.
Okay. So, well, just the fact that I know you're still in an experimentation phase, but the fact that you see fit to have those on your home screen says to me that you're finding them intriguing and you're not dismissing them out of hand by any means.
Yeah, I had some mixed feelings about widgets. During my brief tenure with Android, I didn't use them very often, in part because this is like 10 years ago and the hardware just wasn't there. And so things were just sluggish in general, and the widgets really seemed to slow things down. And of course, Apple tends to borrow a lot of features themselves, but usually when they do, they really add a lot of spit shine polish to it. And so I think it's very much the case with the widgets. Now, I will say one thing I don't like about the widgets, and a lot of people aren't going to like either, is that Apple really strongly discourages, if not just outright bans, developers from putting anything interactive on the widget, right? So there's no widget. Like the Apple Music widget will show you some different like albums or playlists to open up, but you're not going to see like a play pause button on an Apple widget. So I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think that's kind of a silly limitation myself. I can kind of see the rationale for it. So the idea behind these new widgets is that they're merely information portals, right? Now, of course, you can tap on things like you tap on a headline in news and it will open that story in the news app. You can tap on a note in certain widgets and it'll open the note up to edit, but you're not going to actually do anything inside the widget itself. It's merely, just to view things.
But so I'm making this up, and I have not seen the widgets, but I know one widget that was very popular for Mac was the UPS widget, where it would feed information to you about deliveries. So can information be fed from an external service to a widget?
As far as I know, yes. No, I haven't seen any third-party ones yet, but I would imagine, like for instance, the Deliveries app will probably. I'd be willing to bet they'll have a widget.
Okay. Josh Centers will be back in the next edition of Mac Voices to talk more about his new Take Control of iOS 14 and iPadOS 14. We'll get into some of the security features of the new mobile operating systems and some application management and a whole lot more. And of course, we will also cover iPadOS 14 as well. That's next time on Mac Voices. I hope you'll join us. Until then, and as always, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with Mac Voices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.